Okay, hi, I'm Laurenn Jarema, and this is Dulaney, and today our advisory unit was on planning for the future. And to start off, to give you a taste of our rationale, why have middle school students plan? And a part of education that's really important is to make sure that your lessons are interesting and engaging so students truly want to understand the concepts you're trying to get across for them. And in particular, middle school students might have a problem with this because they're already tackling so many other issues in their lives right now. So a great way to pull them into your classroom is to show them how relevant your lessons are to their own lives. And what better way to do this than have a unit on planning for the future? It's their lives, it's their futures. And in particular, some of the professional references we found, one was from an article titled Career Planning in Middle School, and it stated that one of the goals of education is to produce a community of learners who are prepared to meet the challenges of an increasingly complex society. And yet some of our middle graders can't see the connection between education and future success. And then Topper's article, Into the Future, Now Developing Best Practices in Middle, stated that middle-level school programs must include the here and now realities of life in local communities and in our broader society so that young people understand what they need to succeed in as adults. And finally, the article, Education Career Planning in Middle School Counselors, stated that education career planning is a systematic means for helping all middle school students become engaged in school, both academically and socially. And this is great because planning for the future really allows students to become excited in class while also learning how to prepare for their own futures. And that's going to help them make positive choices right then in middle school because they're going to want those positive choices to be carried out in their own futures.
Okay. Starting off with our first lesson, we have managing your time. I know that in middle school, this is something that all your teachers probably pushed or at least mentioned. It's something that some of us don't have a problem with now. How many of you have problems, or you go into a situation where you have a paper due, you have another project due, you have a report due, and you wait until the last minute to do it? Okay, all of you now. So can you all see the value in doing this in the middle school? Starting them to think about, when do I do this? How do I arrange this? And the main activity behind this lesson would be having students prioritize, 7 or 10 different things, and then compare their average day now to how their ideal day would be if they followed those priorities. Our second lesson is stress management. Another big thing that we talked a lot about in the problem papers was stress. So the main idea behind this lesson would be different stress management strategies, different things that cause stress. We'd do a brainstorming session where it lists things that cause stress, do a stress release activity, and then maybe come up with some more ideas to relieve stress. Our third lesson, explore new hobbies, which is actually the one that we'll be exploring later today, is trying to get students to think outside the box. We're trying to get the students to be exposed to different hobbies that they may not know about otherwise, allow them to experience new things to do and become more well-rounded. Lesson 4 is making a budget. I imagine this is especially important now as college students, but how many of you have run into a situation where you have to raise your hand, where you mismanaged money, or you thought you had more than you did, or you run into problems because you didn't set aside money for the rainy day or for the unexpected expenses? And the idea behind this would be walking the students through how to set aside money for those kinds of unexpected events and how to plan a budget using Excel. And then our fifth lesson, finishing up our first week, would be furnishing on a budget. And this is an activity that I actually did in 6th grade. It's something that I really enjoyed. But the basic idea here is you're moving into your first apartment, your first home. You may have the basics. You have a stove. You have a bathroom. But there's a lot of stuff that you don't have. So the idea behind this activity would be students would go through old newspapers and advertisements as a group. They would be given a budget of $1,500, and they would have to work together as a group to cut out advertisements and put them on the poster board of different items needed to furnish the home. So the idea behind this is to get students to think about the cost of starting a new home, starting a new life, and not to go out and spend their $1,500 on the flat screen TV and then not have any towels, not have a bed to sleep in, not have anything.
2, the first lesson in this week would be how to dress professional. And the main objective of this lesson is to teach students exactly what they should wear in a professional environment. And we start off the lesson by pulling up a PowerPoint of different images of clothing and have students voting on whether or not they think they're appropriate or inappropriate for a professional work environment. And from there, we talk about why they made those decisions and exactly what they should be looking for while picking out professional attire. And afterwards, we take them to the computer lab and actually allow them to do a web quest and search for their own professional attire. And then they write a brief essay on why they made those decisions, and that would be the formal evaluation of this lesson. And lesson 7 was job interviewing. And in this lesson, we teach them exactly what skills they need to develop to do well in a professional job interview. And to start off, we have them describe their greatest strengths and their greatest weaknesses before knowing anything about the lesson. And from there, we talk about why they chose those and maybe how they could craft those answers during the lesson so that future employers would want to hire them, even despite their greatest weaknesses. And so we go through and pair up everyone in the class with a partner and give them a list of typical interview questions and have them go through with their partner and each person respond to those. And afterwards, we hand out good responses for those questions and see what they did well and what they need to improve on. And then once again, we go to the computer lab and have them actually search for their own job advertisement. And from there, they write an essay again on exactly how they could change their first answers to really appeal to that future employer and what they've learned throughout the lesson. And then lesson 8 was on resumes. And in this lesson, the main objective was to actually have them write their own resume. And the main material for this would be an example of a personal resume. So if I was teaching the class, I'd bring in my own resume. And I think this is great because it adds a more personal aspect to the lesson. It really gets them to learn about you and become intrigued because of that aspect, while also showing the significance and the authority of that material. And after I bring it up and put it on the overhead, and then we go through each section of the resume. And while we were going through them and discussing exactly what you need to include, I'd have students make their own list of what they would personally include in that section. And from there, they'd be able to go to the computer lab and start creating their own resumes. And even though this is middle school and they might not be able to have the same extent of a resume that I do, I think it's great to get them thinking about it and maybe have them develop plans what they want to become involved in so they could put it on the resume. And no matter what, they're going to have something to add to it, such as their school experience. And lesson 9 was professional emails. And in this, we want to have them develop the main elements of a professional email so they are aware, because emails are such a big part of society today. Everyone uses them. And we'll start off by pulling up an example of a professional email and having them briefly discuss what they think is correct and incorrect through that email. And then from there, we'll go over the main elements of an email, such as the heading, the body, and the signature. And after they learn those elements, we'll go back to that first email and see what was done correctly and what was done incorrectly. And then after they become aware of all that, we'll give them another example of an email and have them do a worksheet based on the correct and incorrect elements of that final email, and that would be the formal evaluation of that lesson. And the final lesson of this unit is career testing. And in this, students are actually going to be able to learn what career path they are best suited for based on their own values, beliefs, goals, all of those things. And they'll do that by first going to the computer lab and actually going to a career testing website and completing the test and getting the results of what career path they may be best suited for. And from there, we'll take them back to the classroom and have them write down their top 2 choices. And if they feel that maybe what the choices that the website gave them weren't best suited for them, they can bring in a different choice as long as they used one of the ones from the website. And then we'll hand them a pro and con sheet where they figure out what they think the pros and cons for those jobs are for them personally, and from there they write an essay on which career path they would like to pursue in the future based on all of that.
And to wrap up the unit, we want to do something a little bit different than standard classroom lecture. So we decided that for our culminating activity, we would like to, possibly the week after we finish this unit, we would invite different professionals from the community, different job sectors to come into our classroom, and we would have the students treated as professional interview. We asked the students, if possible, to dress up, to bring some of their materials from the other days, to bring their resume, to maybe bring a sample of their email that they've written, And they would go in and we'd have mock interviews with the professionals. And the students would be asked to explain or to discuss some of the things that we've talked about over this 2-week advisory unit. And this is just to kind of bring everything home to the students, to give it some more practical application than just being individual activities in class. And the professionals would have a copy of the rubric that we have in our binder to give some idea of how to evaluate. But the main idea behind this would be to show the students that they can use what we've been teaching them, that it does apply to their lives, and it kind of ties it all together for them.
Okay, and so now all of you have received a note card. If everyone could write their name down on that note card, and then their favorite hobby also. Oh, sorry.
I'll just go to my desk.
Yeah, hobby.
Yeah. The more creative, the better, but you can write any kind of hobby that you have.
Just one?
Just one.
Okay, and once everyone's finished doing that, who can tell me exactly what they think a hobby is? Michelle?
Something you do that you enjoy and passes time.
Okay, great. Would anyone like to add to that? Okay. Well, in particular, you're exactly right. Hobbies are fun things that you like to explore on your own. And since we're doing our unit on planning for the future, we're going to discuss exactly how you can discover new hobbies today. Because that's really important to really activate your own interests while also making you a well-rounded person. So you can explore all different hobbies. And in fact, even though it's fun and something you might do on your own, learning exactly what type of hobbies you love can actually lead you to your correct career path so that your work becomes something you love as well. And Dan's going to discuss some of his own hobbies now.
All right, so for today, you are 8th grade class. We're in the middle of our advisory unit. We've previously done time management and stress management. This is kind of tying in from our stress management. Last time, we discussed some ways to relieve stress. So now today, we're going to be discussing hobbies that you can use to relieve that stress. So you've all written down by now, I hope, a hobby of yours. So I'm going to go ahead and start by sharing one of mine. It's one that some of you may not have experienced much with, but how many of you have ever gone snorkeling or scuba diving? Okay, how many of you done it? How many of you know very much about it? All right, I'll just share a little bit of my personal experience. I've been snorkeling, and I've been snorkeling for 10 years now, scuba diving for 5. And probably my favorite part about snorkeling and scuba diving, snorkeling, you can do it almost anywhere that there's water. Scuba diving takes some more training, but you get to be out there in the water, you get to see things in their natural environment. You get to see, especially depending on where you go, there's places all over the place. There's old rock quarries, you can go to the ocean, you can go in rivers, and you can see the fish, you can see the wildlife. And it's just a different experience that many of you as 8th graders may not have had the chance to do yet. So if that's something that sounds interesting to you and you want to know more about, you can feel free to ask me questions about it now. Or if not, then you can ask me after class anytime. Does anybody have any questions about it? No? Okay.
I have a couple minutes.
Have you been scuba diving with sharks?
I actually have, just with the smaller sharks, some of the, I believe they were small tiger sharks, but I didn't do any of the feeding the sharks or anything like that, honestly. Not too good for my kidney health.
Do you have to be good at swimming to use snorkel?
It helps if you want to scuba dive, but to snorkel, most of the time with snorkeling, you're on the surface, so you can do it with a life vest. All that you really need are, you have fins to help you kick and move, and you have a mask so you can look down in the water, and a snorkel so you can breathe the air. So most of the time you're just floating on the surface, looking down.
When you're scuba diving, the first time you scuba dived, did you freak out at all, or?
The first time I scuba dived was actually in a pool. It was for training.
Like first time
Out.
in the
Okay.
ocean.
The first time I went scuba diving outside of controlled circumstances was in a rock quarry. And the water was a lot colder than I would have liked. And it was at a place where people had the habit of feeding the fish. So the fish would come up and nibble at you. It was just bluegill, but it was just a really cool experience. So,
What's your favorite place that you've gone?
my favorite place is Crystal River in Florida. It's one of the coolest things is snorkeling with the manatee there. It's fresh water, but it mixes with the salt, so the manatee come in a little ways. Most of it is something called a buoyancy control device. So you inflate it with air until you're at neutral buoyancy, which means that you're just kind of floating there. You're almost weightless in the water.
What about out of the water? Is it really heavy?
It's probably about 50 or 60 pounds worth of gear, but it's pretty heavy. So. Okay.
Okay. Now we're actually going to split you up into groups, so when your name's called out, then if you could just move. So the first group will come up here. It's Nick, Brooke, Brittany, and Michael. Nick. Okay. And then the second one, if you could go in the back there, it's Kiri Miller, Michelle, Michelle Sports. Okay, and then Maggie and Lisa. You could all move in the back. Michelle.
Okay. See over here, we have Nicole, Kristen, Tracy, Christine, and Kim. And then could we have in back corner, we have Julie, Christopher McMillan, Whitney, and Michelle Jordan.
I wasn't called.
I wasn't called.
And one more group
Oh, okay.
here. Preeti Kraft, Matt King, Kelly Hollenkamp, and Nick Lewis. You can meet somewhere.
Okay, and in this group, all of you are going to be describing exactly what hobby you chose and why. And we tried to diversify the groups the most, so you're going to be learning from each other and hopefully discovering new hobbies.
If you can, please, just give it about 3 minutes per person, and then try and rotate, make sure everybody has a chance to talk about their hobby. If you want to go meet more later to talk about it, that would be fantastic. You can just go ahead and share what hobby you wrote and why. That would be great. And we'll kind of be circulating and listening to some of your conversations.
I like being outside. That's a good hobby. Yeah, I just like sitting outside. Just like hanging yeah, that too. Like I just. I chose water skiing. I play the run every weekend. I enjoy sports. And I'm wheeling from
Who would like to share something they learned about another hobby other than the one they wrote down from the group? Matt, you want to share? What would you like to share?
She water skiing.
Water skis. What can you tell us about water skiing?
Me or him?
Matt?
There's more to it
Yeah, there's more than just 2 skis. Like, if you do barefoot ski, it goes like the boat's like up to 8 miles an hour. And if you fall wrong,
Wow. I did not know that actually. Thank you for sharing. Anybody else have something that they'd like to share that they learned?
Jerry likes to scrap a lot. She really enjoys pictures, and she always has. So she loves the ITC lab. It's like her candy shop, as she put it. I'm sorry.
Did anyone else learn anything exciting today?
If you don't have a lot of money, you can cross stitch for $3 a person and make ornaments.
Wow. Good Christmas gifts.
Well, I hope that all of you learned something new today. I hope that even if it's not something you think you'll ever do, you at least know a little bit more about it now. And I hope you guys have maybe been exposed to some new things that you've never thought about before. And we strongly encourage, if you have more questions for someone in your group, make sure to ask them after class. Thank you for being a great class rep today.